Hey, once again it is time for me to talk about an episode of a superhero animated TV series. Today I will be talking about the two-part episode of Batman the Animated Series titled Heart of Steel. If you dislike spoilers, then I believe you will dislike this review, since I will be covering spoilers pretty heavily. So go watch the episode, and then come back here and listen to what I have to say. And before I get into the review itself, a quick summary of the episode, in case you decided not to go and watch the episode when I warned you to. The episode begins with a suitcase robot robbing Wayne Enterprises. It's trying to get something called wetware, which Bruce describes as a missing link between computers and humans. But the robot did not get the design specs, which it needs for sinister reasons. Bruce suspects that his old mentor who taught him everything he knows about computers might be somehow involved. He suspects correctly, as his old mentor has created a giant robot called Hardak, which is essentially trying to replace all of humanity with Cylons or Terminators or replicants or whatever you want to call them. Hardak actually manages to replace a few humans, Commissioner Gordon, Harvey Bullock, and Mayor Hill, but thanks to the Gordon bot acting absolutely nothing like Gordon himself, Barbara catches on and alerts Batman, and then Batman is soon able to put a stop to Hardak and save all the people that Hardak kept alive for some reason. First and foremost, wowie zowie, this episode had a lot of references to other pieces of pop culture. In the commentary, Kevin Altieri said that he was influenced by the 1980s anime Legend of the Overfiend. We also have a businessman named Rossum, which is a callback to the Czech play Rossum's Universal Robots, which was also the origin of the word robot. And we also have William Sanderson reprising his role from the movie Blade Runner as a naive but intelligent scientist who is betrayed by an artificial intelligence. So it's pretty clear that the people who made this episode have a great affinity for the pop cultural touchstone that is evil robots. But does that passion for the subject matter mean that they made a good episode out of those tropes that they love so much? I would say, for the most part, they did a pretty good job. One thing I should mention, since I always do mention this whenever we have a two-parter, the pacing here is a little bit wonky. In the past, I've said that some of the two-parters that we have gotten could have been pretty easily condensed into one single episode. I don't think that that could have been done here, though. We have just enough stuff going on that it would be too crowded for one episode, but it's just little enough going on that the pacing feels very slow when it's stretched out into two episodes. For instance, it takes over 1/4 of the first episode just to finish the scene that introduces us to the conflict, evil suitcase robot stealing from Wayne Enterprises. And then it's over 14 minutes into a 20-ish minute episode before we even find out the general premise of this two-parter, evil robots trying to infiltrate humanity. For a series that has in the past managed to make use of its short runtime in such an economic fashion, this is a little alarming. But there's literally nothing that could have been done about this, since there's definitely no way that this could have easily been crammed into one episode, but I still felt the need to bring it up. Other than the slightly wonky pacing, I really enjoyed myself here. Perhaps that's because, like the creators of this episode obviously were, I'm also a huge fan of the very basic idea of evil robots versus humanity. Blade Runner is one of my favorite science fiction movies of all time. I'm a huge fan of the first Terminator movie and the Sarah Connor Chronicles spin-off series. At least conceptually speaking, I'm also a fan of the idea of Battlestar Galactica. So this episode almost feels like it was made for me. But someone who is maybe just not as much of a fan of those things that I mentioned, this might not work as well for them as it did for me. This episode is also noteworthy because it introduces us to Barbara Gordon for the first time. Now, I'm a huge fan of this character, at least in her guise as Oracle from the comics, but I have to say that this episode does not really do this character justice. She reminds me a great deal of Cousin Oliver from the Brady Bunch. You know, you've got your main character or cast of characters, but then the creators of the series feel like they need to skew the show back toward a younger demographic, and so they introduce a frankly really annoying younger sidekick type character who is insufferably good at things that the main hero is not good at. See Kitty Pryde of the X-Men for a really great example of this in action. Now, fortunately for this episode and this series overall, this series doesn't really go there. I mean, they do sort of play with this idea, but they never really commit to it. As soon as Barbara grabbed Batman's cape and is yelling at him that she's coming with him, I groaned out loud. And don't get the wrong idea, this isn't about some sexist nonsense where I am saying, "Bah, this is a boys-only club, Batman doesn't need no chicas accompanying him on adventures." No, this is not that at all. This is coming from an angle of, Barbara is a college student who I do not buy for 1 nanosecond is accomplished enough to accompany Batman and not get fatally injured along the way. She says at one point that being the daughter of a commissioner, she picks up a few things things like self-defense and sneaking around a building full of killer robots. Okay, let's assume that I buy this. Jim Gordon, if we know anything about him either in the comics or this episode alone, we know that he is quite overprotective of his daughter. So yeah, I totally buy that he would pay for her to go to self-defense classes and stuff like that. But taking classes once a week at Lewis Scott's karate dojo and then expecting that you are in a position to help Batman is about like if I took one class on politics and then I figured that I was knowledgeable enough to assist the President of the United States in running this country. It just doesn't work that way. But like I said, this episode doesn't fully commit to making her the super competent, annoying teen sidekick character who shows up the main hero at every chance. She does defeat a miniature robot with her handy mirror that she just happened to have with her, but other than that, she doesn't really do anything in this episode. At one point, I found myself worrying that she was going to save Batman from an evil robot who he would, for some reason, not be able to defeat on his own, but fortunately the episode does not go there. And just so we're clear, if it was Tim Drake who was a normal suburban kid who took a few self-defense classes and then decided that he was ready to help Batman, I would hate that also. And heck, I probably will hate that when we get to Tim Drake being a part of this series. The only reason that I didn't make a big stink about this in the Dick Grayson origin episode is that it is heavily implied that Dick spent years training under Batman before he was ready to go out on patrol with him. Why do I get the feeling that this series is not going to do that with Barbara Gordon? Oh well, I'll whine about that bridge when we cross it. I know it sounds like I complained a lot, but I really did enjoy this episode. It's not the best episode that we've had, but it is definitely one of the most enjoyable, for me anyway. So what did you guys think? I hope you liked the episode and this review as well. If you did, then be sure to come back next week to hear me talk about an episode of Batman Beyond. And the weekend after that, I will be talking about another episode of Batman the Animated Series. And throughout the week, I'll be doing other kinds of videos, so don't forget to check those out. And if you did like this video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.